Sophia pressed the steaming lid of the takeout cup a little tighter, her fingers brushing against the cardboard sleeve before she slid it across the counter. "Large cappuccino, double shot," she called, her voice calm, steady, the kind that had become second nature after 2 years of working behind the counter of Luna's café. The man in the grey business suit muttered a distracted thanks, already on his phone, his attention swallowed by numbers and deadlines. Sophia watched him leave, then blew out a breath, shaking her head. "Do people even taste the coffee, or is it just a caffeine IV drip for half of downtown?" she asked, half to herself. "You're just mad he didn't notice the heart you drew in the foam," Lily teased, leaning her elbows on the counter, her curly auburn hair bouncing as she grinned. Sophia laughed, soft but genuine, her eyes flicking toward her friend. "You're imagining things." "Please, you're the queen of latte art. It's basically your love language." The cafe buzzed with its usual rhythm, murmurs of conversation, the hiss of the espresso machine, the comforting clink of cups. Morning light poured through the wide windows, painting everything in gold. For Sophia, this place was safe, predictable. She liked the steady pace, the familiar faces, the way life here moved without surprise. And yet, sometimes, just sometimes, she caught herself staring out the window, her gaze following strangers in expensive suits, stepping out of sleek black cars, people who seemed to live lives filled with secrets and fire. She told herself she didn't envy them, but her heart always beat faster, as though craving a spark her little cafe world couldn't give. "Soph?" Sophia blinked. Lily was waving a hand in front of her face. "You spaced out again. What is it this time? Imagining yourself in Paris with some brooding artist." "Not Paris. And definitely not an artist," Sophia said, her lips twitching. Lily smirked. "So, brooding businessman then?" "More like someone who makes me forget the world for a second," Sophia admitted, surprising herself with the honesty. Lily's expression softened. "You deserve that. You deserve someone who looks at you like you're the only star in their sky." Sophia rolled her eyes but smiled. "Since when did you become a poet?" "Since I watched you settle for ordinary when you're anything but." The bell above the door chimed, saving Sophia from having to answer. A woman in a chic pencil skirt walked in, heels clicking, perfume following like a declaration. She strode up to the counter with the air of someone who expected the world to move out of her way. "I'm here for the hotel order," she said crisply. "Menus for the event tonight?" Sophia blinked. "Menus?" The woman sighed, impatient. "Yes. The manager said one of you would deliver them to the Ravenwood Hotel by 6. Don't tell me they forgot to tell you." Sophia glanced toward the office where her boss was probably buried in invoices. "Right, of course, I'll take care of it." The woman gave a curt nod, then swept out as quickly as she came, leaving behind the faint trace of roses and authority. Lily whistled. The Ravenwood. That's where all the high society types go to strut around. Bet you'll see a celebrity. "I'm not going to see anyone," Sophia said firmly, grabbing the folder of menus. "I'm just dropping this off and leaving. No mingling, no gawking, no trouble." "Famous last words," Lily teased. By the time evening settled over the city, Sophia was standing in front of the Ravenwood Hotel, her breath caught somewhere between awe and nerves. The building soared into the sky, glass and steel gleaming against the dusk. Inside, golden light spilled across polished marble, crystal chandeliers glittering overhead. She clutched the folder closer, reminding herself she didn't belong here. She was just a messenger, nothing more. But her heels clicked too loudly against the marble as she stepped inside, and her nerves spiked with every elegant stranger brushing past her. A couple in designer attire swept by, the woman laughing lightly, diamonds flashing at her throat. 2 men in tailored suits spoke in hushed, clipped tones, their eyes sharp. Sophia's skin prickled. She hurried toward the reception desk, repeating in her head, "Just drop it off. Just drop it off." Her heel snagged on the edge of the carpet. She stumbled forward, arms flailing, folder slipping from her grasp, and then she crashed into him. The impact was firm, unyielding, as though she had collided with a wall of heat and steel. Papers scattered like leaves. Her clutch hit the marble and her breath rushed out in a startled gasp. She looked up and froze. The man towering above her wasn't just another guest. His suit was cut to perfection, black as midnight, his tie a subtle blood-red stripe that seemed more like a warning than an accessory. His eyes, dark and unreadable, locked onto hers with a calm so dangerous it felt like being pinned beneath a storm. The air around him shifted. Suddenly, everyone else seemed to fade, their conversations dimming, the world narrowing to just this one impossible man. Her pulse thundered. She should have mumbled an apology, scrambled to gather her things, and vanished. But something in his gaze held her there, rooted to the spot. The Mafia Boss. The whispers she'd overheard in the café came rushing back. Rumours of a man who ruled the city's underworld with velvet-gloved fists, a name spoken with both fear and awe. Dante Moretti. He didn't scowl. He didn't shove her away. Instead, his lips curved into a slow smile, one that sent shivers skating down her spine. He bent slightly, not to help her up, but to tilt her chin with one finger, forcing her to meet his gaze. His voice was a low murmur, velvet wrapped around steel. "From now on, you're mine." Sophia's breath caught. She wanted to laugh, to say this was absurd, to push his hand away. But the weight of his words sank into her, stirring something reckless and undeniable in her chest. Her heart whispered, "Run." Her soul whispered, "Stay." She didn't remember gathering her papers, didn't remember how her legs carried her out of the lobby, only that her hands were trembling as she burst into the cool night air. Her pulse pounded against her throat, and her thoughts tumbled over each other in chaotic disbelief. What kind of man said something like that to a stranger? What kind of woman felt her knees go weak hearing it? Sophia pressed the folder to her chest, as if it could shield her from the memory of his eyes, his smile, his claim. She told herself it was ridiculous, that she'd never see him again, that this was just a strange encounter in a place she didn't belong. But deep down, she knew the truth. That night, everything had changed. And some part of her already understood. Dante Moretti was not a man who made idle promises. The café felt smaller the next morning, the walls too close, the rhythm of clinking cups too loud. Sophia moved through her routine, but her thoughts kept circling back to the Ravenwood, to the man whose presence had swallowed the room whole. She hadn't told Lily the full story, only that she'd tripped and embarrassed herself. Even so, Lily had teased her relentlessly. "See, I told you you'd meet someone," Lily said, balancing 2 mugs in her hands. "What was he like?" Sophia hesitated, then shrugged. "Intense." "Intense good or intense scary?" "Both," Sophia admitted softly. Lily arched a brow. "Well, now I'm intrigued. Which means you're definitely in trouble." Sophia tried to laugh it off, but her heart wasn't steady. The memory of his words echoed, curling around her like smoke. "From now on, you're mine." She had no idea what it meant, but she knew one thing. Nothing about her simple, predictable life felt steady anymore. And the question lingered in her chest, relentless and breathless. If he came back, would she run or would she stay? If you were Sophia, would you run away from that dangerous gaze or stay to see what happens next? Tell us in the comments. The morning rush had ended at Luna's café, leaving only the hum of the fridge and the low murmur of a couple in the corner booth. Sophia stood behind the counter, rinsing pictures, her mind elsewhere. She had replayed the moment 100 times, the stumble, the fall, the dangerous smile, and those words. "From now on, you're mine." Her skin still prickled when she thought about it. It was insane. Men didn't just say things like that. Not men in her world, not to her. And yet the memory clung to her like perfume that refused to wash off. Earth to Sophia. She turned, startled, to see Lily balancing a tray of croissants. Her friend's auburn curls were escaping from their bun, her green eyes alight with curiosity. "You've been a million miles away all morning. Spill." Sophia forced a laugh. "There's nothing to spill, I just tripped last night. Embarrassing. That's all." "Tripped?" Lily smirked. "You're blushing. That was no ordinary trip." "Lily?" "Don't lily me, you met someone." Sophia busied herself wiping the counter, hoping her silence would end the interrogation. It didn't. Lily leaned closer. "Tell me, was he handsome, rich, dangerous?" The last word made Sophia freeze. Dangerous. Yes. That was the only word that fit. But she couldn't admit it. Not here, not now. "Drop it," she said softly, her tone firmer than usual. Lily studied her for a beat, then sighed. "Fine. But if you don't tell me, your face will." Later that afternoon, Sophia left work and walked through the city streets toward her small apartment. Her neighborhood wasn't glamorous, but it was safe, tucked away from the glass towers and neon glare. The air smelled faintly of fried food from the corner diner. Kids played tag on the sidewalk, and Mrs. Rivera from 2B waved from her balcony. This was her world. Predictable, ordinary, exactly how she liked it. Her phone buzzed. "Mark," she answered quickly. "Hey, big brother." "Hey, yourself," Mark's voice rumbled. He was 3 years older, built like a linebacker, with a protective streak that had been carved into him since their parents died. "You working too hard again?" "Just the usual." "Good, keep it that way." His voice dropped lower. "Stay away from the Ravenwood, Soph. Word is it's crawling with men you don't want to be anywhere near." Sophia's pulse skipped. "Why would I be at the Ravenwood?" "I heard your boss supplies them. Just be careful, okay? That place attracts people you don't mess with." She swallowed. "I will." Mark's tone softened. "You know I just want you safe." "I know." After hanging up, she leaned against the lamppost, heart pounding. If Mark only knew. 2 nights later, Sophia's simple world tilted again. She was closing the café, humming under her breath as she stacked chairs, when the bell above the door chimed. She froze. It was him. Dante Moretti. The café seemed to shrink as he stepped inside, his presence filling every corner. He wore another tailored suit, dark charcoal this time, the tie undone at his throat, as though the city bent to his schedule and he had nothing to prove. His eyes swept the room, finding her instantly. Sophia's breath caught. "You," he said simply. Her voice was a whisper. "Me?" He walked closer, each step deliberate. "I've been thinking about you." Sophia's instincts screamed to back away, but her feet wouldn't move. His presence pulled at her, like gravity itself had shifted. "You don't even know me," she managed. A slow smile curved his lips. "That's about to change." She shook her head. "You can't just walk into my life and claim you," he interrupted, his voice smooth but unyielding. "I already did." Heat rushed through her veins, anger and something far more dangerous twining together. "I'm not some prize you can point at and keep." Dante's gaze softened for a fraction, almost amused. "That fire in your eyes. That's why I couldn't let you walk away." Sophia's heart thudded wildly. She wanted to demand he leave, to push him out of her café and her world. But then he leaned in, lowering his voice. "There are things in this city that would swallow someone like you whole. You crossed my path. Now you're under my protection, whether you like it or not." Her lips parted, words dying on her tongue. Because deep down she understood. He wasn't offering. He was promising. And some reckless part of her, a part she barely recognized, didn't want to run. The next morning, Sophia sat across from Lily at their usual breakfast spot, trying to act normal. The clatter of dishes, the hiss of bacon on the grill, the chatter of other diners, all of it felt too bright, too loud, too alive. "So, you gonna tell me now?" Lily asked between bites of pancakes. Sophia sighed. "Fine. met someone. Lily's fork clattered. I knew it. Who is he? Sophia hesitated. How could she explain Dante Moretti? How could she explain the way he made the air feel heavier, the way he unsettled her without even trying? He's complicated, she said at last. Lily's eyes sparkled. Complicated is just another word for exciting. Sophia stirred her coffee. Or dangerous. But the truth she couldn't admit. Dangerous had never looked so tempting. That night, alone in her apartment, Sophia sat on her couch, staring at the city lights through the window. She pressed her knees to her chest, trying to slow the wild rhythm of her heart. Dante's face haunted her, the sharp cut of his jaw, the intensity in his gaze, the way his words slid under her skin and refused to leave. She should have been terrified. Maybe she was. But layered beneath the fear was something else. A pull. A hunger she couldn't name. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then swiped the screen. A single message. Dinner. Tomorrow. I'll send a car. D. Her stomach dropped. She should say no. She should delete the message and block the number. She should do everything to keep her simple life safe. Instead, her fingers hovered over the screen, trembling, caught between two choices, the steady world she knew, or the storm that was Dante Moretti. And for the first time in her life, Sophia wondered if she was brave enough to step into the fire. The car was waiting exactly when the message promised. A sleek black sedan with tinted windows pulled up outside Sophia's apartment just as the evening sun dipped below the skyline, leaving streaks of gold and crimson over the city. Sophia stood on the sidewalk, clutching her small purse, her pulse racing. She told herself she shouldn't be here, shouldn't even consider stepping into a stranger's car, especially not his. And yet, here she was, drawn by something she couldn't explain. The driver, a man in a crisp suit, stepped out and opened the back door with a silent nod. No words, no explanation, just expectation. Her legs felt like they were made of glass as she slid inside. The leather seats cradled her, the scent of expensive cologne lingering faintly. City lights blurred past the window as the car glided through traffic, silent except for the faint hum of the engine. Every turn brought her closer to the unknown, and still she didn't ask the driver where they were going, because she knew. They stopped in front of an Italian restaurant Sophia had only ever passed in awe, the kind of place where the wait list was 6 months long and the menu didn't even bother listing prices. The driver led her inside, and her breath caught. The dining room glowed with golden light, crystal chandeliers casting soft radiance over velvet-draped booths. A low murmur of wealthy voices filled the air, clinking glasses punctuating conversations. At the far corner, in a private alcove, he sat. Dante Moretti. He rose as she approached, every movement controlled, deliberate. His dark suit framed his broad shoulders, his tie a shade of midnight blue, his gaze fixed entirely on her. Sophia, he said, her name rolling off his tongue like a secret. She swallowed, unsure whether to sit or run. You came. Her chin lifted. I'm not sure why. Dante's lips curved into that slow, knowing smile. Curiosity. She sat opposite him, her pulse hammering. A waiter appeared instantly, pouring wine into her glass before retreating as though the air itself had commanded it. Sophia lifted the glass, but her hand trembled. Why me? Because you tripped into me, Dante said smoothly, leaning forward, eyes locked on hers. And in that moment, I decided I wasn't letting you walk away. Sophia bristled. That's not how life works. You don't just claim someone like property. His smile faded, replaced by an intensity that made her throat dry. This city is filled with wolves in silk suits. They'll tear apart anything fragile. You... He paused, his voice lowering. You're not fragile, Sophia, but you don't belong in their world, or mine. Yet here you are. Her breath caught. And what world is that? Before he could answer, 2 men in dark suits approached, murmuring low. Dante's expression hardened. One moment, he said, rising smoothly. He stepped aside with them, voices hushed but sharp. Sophia sipped her wine, straining to hear. One word cut through, sending a chill down her spine. Rivalry. Her fingers tightened on the stem of the glass. She leaned slightly, catching fragments. Not safe here. Strike tonight. Boss needs to... She froze. Boss. Rivalry. Strike. Her heart lurched. Whoever Dante was, whatever world he belonged to, danger clung to him like a second skin. When he returned, his face was unreadable. Forgive the interruption. Sophia tried to steady her voice. Who were they? No one you need to worry about. Her chest tightened. That's not good enough. If I'm here, if you've dragged me into this, I've dragged you nowhere. Dante cut in, his tone sharp but not cruel. You could have ignored my message. I should have. But you didn't. The silence between them pulsed, heavy with truth. Sophia lowered her gaze, her pulse erratic. He was right. She should have walked away. But she hadn't. And now she wasn't sure she could. Whatever that was, she said softly. It sounded dangerous. Dante studied her, his jaw tight, then leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. You should be careful who you overhear, Sophia. Some truths can't be unseen. Her stomach dropped. For a long moment, neither spoke. The restaurant hummed around them, but all she could hear was the thunder of her own heartbeat. Finally, Dante sat back, his expression softening. Eat. You'll need your strength. For what? She whispered. His eyes held hers, unflinching. For staying close to me. Because whether you realize it yet or not, the moment you tripped into me, your life stopped being simple. Sophia's chest tightened, torn between fear and the unshakable pull she felt toward him. And somewhere deep inside, she knew he was right. Her world would never be ordinary again. The bell above the café door jingled. Sophia glanced up from wiping the counter, her stomach knotting before her eyes even confirmed it. Dante Moretti stood there. Again. It was a Tuesday afternoon, sunlight spilling through the windows in lazy stripes, the kind of day that begged for routine and comfort. But with Dante framed in the doorway, everything ordinary fractured into something charged and dangerous. Conversations faltered, chairs scraped, every head turned. The café regulars, office workers and students froze as though a shadow had passed over the room. Afternoon, Dante said casually, his gaze locked solely on her. Coffee, she stammered before she could stop herself. His smile flickered. Yes. Black. Extra strong. Her co-workers shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a tall barista named Greg, leaned closer and whispered, Soph, do you know who that is? He's bad news. Sophia's heart skipped. Just make the coffee, she murmured back, her voice steadier than she felt. She brought the cup to Dante's table, setting it carefully in front of him. He didn't touch it. Instead, he reached for her wrist, gently but firmly enough that she couldn't pull away. You ignored me last night, he said softly, low enough that no one else could hear. Sophia swallowed. You can't expect me to just... Yes, he interrupted, eyes narrowing. I can. Heat rushed through her, a mix of anger and something she didn't want to name. You can't just walk into my cafe like you own me. I don't own you. He leaned closer, voice dark velvet. But I will protect you, even from yourself. Her pulse hammered, defiance rising. I don't need protecting. Dante released her wrist, his eyes glittering with something unreadable. We'll see. That evening, Sophia walked home faster than usual, the city lights sharp and cold against the dusk. Every shadow seemed longer, every corner darker. She had the sensation of being followed, though every time she looked back the sidewalk stretched empty. By the time she reached her apartment building, her skin prickled with unease. She fumbled with her keys, her breath catching, until a voice spoke from the shadows. You shouldn't walk alone. Sophia jumped, nearly dropping her keys. Dante stepped out from the dim glow of the street lamp, his suit immaculate, his presence unmistakable. Her voice shook with irritation. "Are you following me now?" "Yes," he said simply. "And you should be grateful. You were being watched." The bottom dropped from her stomach. "By who?" "Not mine." His expression hardened. "Which means trouble." Her breath hitched. "You're saying someone else is interested," Dante cut in. "That's why you need me." "No," Sophia said firmly, even though her knees trembled. "What I need is space. You can't just decide I belong to you." Dante stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And yet, here you are, arguing with me instead of running." Her lips parted, a protest forming, but no words came. Because he was right. The days blurred after that. Dante kept showing up, sometimes at the café, sometimes outside her building, sometimes even in the quiet moments when she thought she was alone. It should have terrified her. But what unsettled Sophia more than his presence was the way her body betrayed her, how her breath caught when he leaned close, how her pulse quickened when his hand brushed hers, how she found herself waiting, wanting. Her brother Mark noticed the change. "You've been distracted lately," he said one evening over dinner at her apartment, his fork clattering against the plate. "What's going on, Soph?" "Nothing." She forced a smile. "Just work." "Work doesn't put that look on your face." His eyes narrowed. "You're seeing someone." Her throat tightened. "Mark." "Who is he?" Mark pressed, voice sharp. "If it's who I think it is, walk away now. Guys like him destroy everything they touch." Sophia's hand trembled around her glass. "You don't understand." "I don't need to," Mark said flatly. "I've heard the stories. Mafia, violence, blood. If you care about your life, about us, you'll end this." Sophia bit her lip, torn between anger and the ache of truth. She didn't want to lie, but she couldn't admit it either. Not yet. 2 nights later, the unease crystallized into something real. Sophia closed the café late, the streets unusually empty. She pulled her coat tighter, the wind biting. Her footsteps echoed, until she realized she wasn't the only one walking. 2 men lingered at the corner, their silhouettes sharp under the streetlight. Their eyes tracked her, unblinking. Her chest tightened. She quickened her pace. A 3rd man appeared ahead, blocking the sidewalk. "Lost, sweetheart." His voice oozed menace. Sophia's stomach dropped. She spun to retreat, only to collide with someone solid and unyielding. She gasped. It was Dante. The air shifted instantly. His presence rolled out like thunder, his gaze slicing through the night. The men faltered, unease rippling across their faces. Dante's voice was soft, lethal. "She's with me." The silence stretched. Then, one by one, the men backed away, disappearing into the shadows as though swallowed whole. Sophia trembled. Dante turned to her, his eyes searching her face. "You see now?" he murmured. "You're not safe without me." Her throat tightened. "And with you? Am I safe then?" For a moment he didn't answer. His gaze softened, and in it she saw something raw, something almost human beneath the steel. "Yes," he said finally. "With me you're safe." Sophia's heart raced. She wanted to argue, to demand why her life had to change just because she tripped into him. But the truth was undeniable. Her world was no longer steady. And what terrified her most wasn't Dante's presence. It was how much she already wanted him to stay. Sophia had promised herself she wouldn't see him again. After that night on the street, the way Dante's presence had driven the shadows back, the way his voice had wrapped around her like armor, she told herself it was too much, too dangerous, too close. And yet, when his car pulled up outside the café 2 days later, sleek and black like the edge of a blade, she found herself sliding into the back seat without argument. The drive was silent. Dante sat beside her this time, his presence filling the car. His hand rested on the leather between them. his fingers still, as though even the smallest movement might shatter the fragile air that hummed with unspoken tension. They stopped not at a restaurant, not at a hotel, but at a sprawling townhouse tucked behind iron gates. Sophia's breath caught as she stepped inside. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, oil paintings of Italian landscapes. Wealth and danger, entwined like smoke and flame. Dante led her to a quiet room lined with bookshelves, the fire crackling in the hearth. He gestured for her to sit. She perched on the edge of the sofa, her hands trembling against her knees. "You wanted to know why," he said finally, his voice low, his gaze steady. Sophia's chest tightened. "Why you chose me?" Dante studied her, his jaw taut. "You remind me of someone." Her breath stalled. "Someone?" He exhaled slowly, as though the memory itself cost him. "A woman I once loved, years ago. She was fire, bright, reckless, impossible to hold, and she betrayed me." The words hung in the air, heavy, final. Sophia's heart clenched. "And you think I'm her?" "No." His voice sharpened. "You're nothing like her. But when I saw you, when you crashed into me, for one impossible second, I thought fate had given me another chance. Not with her, with something I didn't know I still wanted." Sophia's throat closed. She wanted to breathe, to move, to speak. But all she could do was sit there, caught in the raw honesty in his eyes. "You don't know me," she whispered. "I know enough," Dante said. "Enough to know I haven't stopped thinking about you since that night. Enough to know you've already changed everything." Her pulse pounded. "Or maybe you just see her ghost when you look at me." Dante's expression tightened, pain flashing in his eyes. "I told you. You are not her. You are something else." Silence filled the space between them, sharp and fragile. Sophia's chest ached with questions, with doubt, with the weight of something far bigger than herself. Before she could answer, a crash echoed from the hall. Dante shot to his feet, eyes dark. A man burst into the room, breathless. "They struck again," the man said, his voice urgent. "2 of our men, gone. The Romano families making their move." Sophia froze. Romano, rivalry, violence. Dante's face hardened into the mask of a man who had survived battles most would never imagine. He gave a curt nod, then turned back to her. "You see?" His voice was a low growl. "My world isn't safe, not for me, and especially not for you." Sophia stood, her knees trembling. "Then why drag me into it?" "Because I can't let you go." Her breath caught. The fire crackled louder, filling the silence that stretched between them. And in that moment, amid the danger pressing at the walls, amid the ghosts of betrayal and the threat of war, Sophia saw something terrifying in Dante's eyes. Not just possession, not just desire, need. And for the first time she admitted the truth she had been running from. She needed him too. The night air was sharp against Sophia's skin as she left the café. She hugged her coat closer, trying to convince herself that walking home was safe, that Dante's warning was nothing more than an attempt to pull her deeper into his world. The streets were quieter than usual, shadows stretching longer under the dim glow of street lamps. Her phone buzzed. A message from Lily. "Wine tomorrow? You owe me details." Sophia smiled faintly, typing back a quick yes. She needed Lily, she needed normal. But the moment her thumb hit send, a black van screeched to a halt at the curb. The doors burst open. Hands, rough, gloved, merciless, snatched her before she could scream. A cloth pressed to her mouth, the scent sharp and chemical, and the world tilted, then went black. When Sophia woke, the air was damp and cold. Concrete walls loomed around her, shadows crawling across the floor from a single bare bulb overhead. Her wrists ached, tied with coarse rope, the fibres biting into her skin. The metallic tang of rust and oil lingered in the air. Her pulse thundered. She pulled at the ropes, panic clawing up her throat. A voice cut through the silence, smooth, mocking. "So this is the girl." Sophia froze. A man stepped into the light, his smile sharp, his suit immaculate despite the warehouse setting. His eyes glittered with cruel amusement. "You don't belong in this world, little dove," he said softly, circling her like a predator. "But Dante Moretti put you here the moment he looked at you." Sophia's chest tightened. "What do you want from me?" The man crouched, his face inches from hers. "To remind Dante that everything he touches turns to ash." Meanwhile, across the city, Dante slammed his fist against the polished wood of his desk. Glass rattled, men around him shifting nervously. His jaw was clenched so tightly his teeth ached, rage boiling in his chest. "They took her," Marco, his right-hand man, said grimly. "Romano's men. They left no trail." "They left one," Dante growled. His voice was a low rumble, dangerous and barely contained. "They always do." He turned away, pacing, his mind a storm. He had been warned. Every instinct told him that pulling Sophia close would put her in danger. And yet he hadn't listened. He couldn't. From the moment she tripped into his arms, she had unraveled something inside him he hadn't known still existed. And now she was paying the price. "Boss," Marco said carefully, "if you move too openly, Romano will strike harder. You risk everything. Your men, your empire." Dante spun, his gaze lethal. "Do you think I care about my empire more than her?" Silence. The truth was written in his face. Dante Moretti, the man who had built an empire on fear, who had never flinched from blood or betrayal, was unraveling because of one woman. "Find her," he said finally, his voice like iron. "I don't care what it costs." Back in the warehouse, Sophia sat against the wall, her breath shallow. She tried to stay calm, tried to think, but the ropes were too tight, her body trembling with cold and fear. Her mind betrayed her, flashing images of Dante, the heat of his gaze, the steadiness of his voice, the way he had stood between her and danger like an immovable wall. Did he even care enough to come for her? Or was she just a reminder of someone else, someone he had already lost? Her throat burned. She didn't want to cry. She wouldn't give them that. But despair gnawed at her, whispering that she was nothing more than leverage, a pawn in a game she had never asked to play. Footsteps echoed. A guard tossed a bottle of water toward her, laughing when it rolled just out of reach. "Drink up, princess. You'll need your strength when your boyfriend realizes he can't save you." Sophia glared, her pulse spiking with something sharper than fear. Rage. Defiance. She was nobody's pawn. Dante sat in the back of the car, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice a razor's edge. "Where?" "Warehouse on the docks," Marco confirmed. "Heavy guard. It's a trap." Dante's lips curved into something dark. "Then we'll spring it." Marco hesitated. "Boss, if you do this, you're choosing her over everything." Dante's gaze turned to the window, the city lights blurring. For years he had lived for control, for dominance, for the empire he had carved from the shadows. But none of it meant anything as long as she was out there, scared, alone, thinking he wouldn't come. "Everything means nothing without her," Dante said coldly. "She's mine." Hours crawled by in the warehouse. Sophia's wrists bled from struggling against the ropes. Her throat was raw, her body aching. She whispered to herself in the dark, fragments of courage she barely believed. "You're stronger than this. You don't need him, you don't—" Her voice cracked. "You don't need anyone." But the truth was cruel. She did need him. She needed Dante to walk through that door to prove that his words hadn't been empty, that she wasn't just another shadow in his dangerous world. And the longer she waited, the more her hope began to fray. Maybe he wouldn't come. Maybe she really was disposable. Tears stung her eyes, slipping down her cheeks before she could stop them. She pressed her forehead to her knees, the darkness swallowing her whole. At that same moment, Dante was gearing up. His men strapped weapons to their belts, checked ammunition, prepared for war. But Dante's mind wasn't on the battle. It was on her. The way she had looked at him with fire in her eyes. The way her laugh had softened the edges of his hardened world. The way she had made him believe for the first time in years that something other than power mattered. This wasn't about strategy. This wasn't about reputation. It was about her. And Dante Moretti had never lost something he claimed. Back in the warehouse, Sophia heard it. The first sound was faint. Boots against gravel, muffled voices outside. Then, the sudden crack of gunfire. Shouts, the thud of bodies hitting the ground. Her heart lurched, the door burst open. And there he was. Dante, dark and furious, his suit jacket discarded, his shirt stained with the grime of battle. His eyes found her instantly, blazing with something that silenced every doubt she had carried. "Dante," she whispered, her voice breaking. He strode to her, cutting the ropes with a swift motion, his hands cupping her face as though needing proof she was real. "You're safe," he murmured, his voice raw. "I've got you." Sophia's body sagged against him, relief and disbelief flooding her veins. For the first time since she had tripped into him, she let herself believe. He had chosen her, and nothing would ever be the same again. The world outside the warehouse was chaos. Sirens in the distance, gunpowder sharp in the air, Dante's men sweeping the grounds to finish what he had started. But in Dante's arms, Sophia felt only the thundering beat of his heart. Strong, relentless, alive. He pulled her closer, his hand cradling the back of her head. "It's over," he murmured. "They won't touch you again." Sophia clutched his shirt, the fabric rough beneath her trembling fingers. "You can't promise that." Dante drew back just enough to meet her eyes, his expression fierce. "I can. And I will. As long as I breathe, you're mine." The words struck deep, a mix of comfort and danger. Her lips parted, a protest hovering, but what spilled instead was raw truth. "I thought you wouldn't come." For the first time since she'd met him, his mask cracked. Pain flickered across his face, brief but unmistakable. "I almost didn't deserve to." Sophia blinked. "What do you mean?" Dante's jaw tightened. He looked past her as though the shadows themselves might judge him. "When they took you, my men reminded me what was at stake. My empire, years of building power, alliances, territories. If I rushed in, I risked it all." Her chest ached. "And you hesitated." "Yes," he admitted, the words scraping like gravel. "For one goddamn second I hesitated, and it was the worst second of my life." The honesty cut sharper than lies ever could. Tears burned her eyes, not from pain, but from the depth of his confession. "Then why come?" she whispered. He reached for her hand, lifting it to his lips, his eyes never leaving hers. "Because I realized that without you the empire is worth nothing. I've lived years thinking power was enough. It isn't. You are." Her breath shuddered out. The man who had terrified her, unsettled her, consumed her, was now looking at her as though she was the only thing that tethered him to life. And something shifted inside her. She had thought she was weak in this world, a pawn pulled into a game she never asked for. But sitting here, bruised and shaken, she realized she had a kind of power Dante's empire could never give him. The power to change him. Sophia cupped his cheek, her thumb brushing the faint stubble. "Don't lose yourself for me." Dante's eyes softened, almost breaking. "I already found myself because of you." They moved quickly after that. Dante's men ushered them into a waiting car, the city flashing past in streaks of neon and shadow. Sophia leaned against the window, her body aching, her mind spinning. Dante's hand found hers, anchoring her. "You need rest." She turned to him, her voice steady despite the fear that lingered. "Rest won't change what just happened. I was taken because of you." His grip tightened. "No, you were taken because of me and because I wasn't fast enough to keep you safe." Sophia swallowed hard. "And next time? What if there's a next time?" "There won't be." "You can't know that." Dante's gaze locked on hers, unflinching. "I'll burn this city to the ground before I let anyone touch you again." Her heart pounded. His vow was terrifying, reckless, absolute. And yet some part of her believed him. Days later, in the quiet sanctuary of Dante's townhouse, Sophia found herself pacing the library, her thoughts a tangled storm. Dante had given her space, retreating to deal with his men, his rivals, his empire. But she could feel him everywhere. The scent of his cologne lingering on the couch, the echo of his voice in her memory, the warmth of his hand still branded on her skin. The door creaked open. Dante entered, exhaustion etched into his features. For once he looked less like a king of shadows and more like a man carrying the weight of his world. Sophia stepped toward him before she could think. "You can't fight everyone." He gave a humorless smile. "Watch me." Her chest tightened. "That's not what I want. I don't need a man who burns the world for me. I need a man who'll stand beside me in it." The silence was sharp. Dante studied her, his eyes searching, as though testing whether she truly meant it. Then slowly, he exhaled, something breaking open inside him. He reached for her hand, pressing it against his chest. His heartbeat thundered beneath her palm, strong and unyielding. "You already have that man," he said softly. "You just need to believe it." Sophia's throat ached. She wanted to deny it, to cling to her fears. But as his eyes held hers, steady and raw, she felt hope stir. Maybe love in the shadows wasn't weakness. Maybe it was the only kind strong enough to survive. She leaned into him, her forehead against his. His breath mingled with hers, warm and steady. "I'm not fragile," she whispered. "No," he agreed, his lips brushing hers. "You're fire, and I'll never let it go out." Their kiss was raw, desperate, a vow sealed in heat and trembling hands. And in that moment Sophia knew the truth. She wasn't just surviving Dante's world. She was part of it now. The night was heavy with tension, the kind that pressed against skin and bone. From the balcony of Dante's townhouse, Sophia could see the city sprawled below, lights glittering, cars threading through the streets like veins of fire. But none of it felt alive, not when every whispered rumour carried the same name. Romano. Dante stood beside her, his posture rigid, his gaze fixed on the skyline as if the horizon itself was his enemy. The darkness clung to him like a second skin, the weight of his empire on his shoulders. "They won't stop," Sophia said softly, her voice almost lost in the wind. "As long as I'm here, they'll keep coming." His jaw tightened. "They won't get another chance." She turned to him, frustration tightening her chest. "You can't just keep throwing men into the fire. This isn't about power anymore, it's about us. And if you can't see that—" Dante's hand caught hers, firm and unyielding. "It's always been about us. You are the only thing I won't lose." Before she could answer, Marco burst onto the balcony, his expression grim. "Boss, they've made their move. Romano is calling you out. Dockside. Midnight." Dante's lips curved into something dark, dangerous. "Then midnight it is." The docks were a graveyard of shadows. Rusted shipping containers loomed like tombstones, the water lapping against pilings with a hollow, endless rhythm. The scent of salt and iron filled the air, sharp and unforgiving. Sophia stood beside Dante, her pulse racing. He had tried to leave her behind, but she had refused. If this was the end, she would face it with him. Romano's men appeared first, slipping from the darkness, their suits as sharp as knives, their expressions colder. And then came Romano himself, tall, broad, with a predator's smile and eyes that glittered with malice. "Well, well," Romano drawled, his gaze sliding to Sophia. "The little dove herself. You've caused quite a stir." Dante stepped forward, shielding her. His voice was calm, lethal. "This ends tonight." Romano chuckled. "Agreed, but it won't end the way you think." He snapped his fingers. From the shadows, another figure stepped forward, and Sophia's breath caught. It was Greg, the barista from the café. The one who had warned her, who had muttered about Dante being bad news. His smirk was sharp now, his eyes cold. Her stomach lurched. "You?" Greg shrugged. Someone had to tell them where to find you. Sophia's knees weakened, betrayal slicing through her. All those casual words, all those careful glances. It had all been for this. Dante's voice was ice. "You'll die for that," Greg sneered. "Not before she does." The world exploded into motion. Gunfire cracked, echoing across the water. Dante shoved Sophia behind a container, his body a shield as bullets whizzed past. His men roared into battle, steel against steel, shadows colliding in chaos. Sophia's breath came in gasps, but her eyes scanned desperately. Romano's men pressed forward, outnumbering Dante's. And then she saw Greg, slipping through the fray, gun in hand, his gaze fixed on Dante's back. Her blood ran cold. Without thinking, she grabbed a jagged piece of metal from the ground, surging forward. She slammed it against Greg's wrist, the gun clattering to the ground. "You picked the wrong girl," she spat. Greg snarled, lunging at her, but Sophia ducked, adrenaline surging. She shoved him back with all her strength. He stumbled, and Dante's bullet found its mark a heartbeat later. Greg collapsed, lifeless. Dante's eyes met hers across the chaos, blazing with pride and fury all at once. "Stay down!" But Sophia couldn't. Not now. The battle raged, men falling on both sides. Finally, Dante and Romano faced each other in the open, the fight narrowing to two kings in a war of shadows. Romano's smile was feral. "You've gone soft, Dante. All for a woman. She'll be the end of you." Dante's voice was steel. "No. She's the reason I'll win." The clash was brutal. Fists, blades, blood. Romano was strong, vicious, but Dante fought with something more than rage. He fought with purpose, with love. And when the moment came, when Romano lunged with a knife aimed for Dante's chest, Sophia's voice cut through the night. "Behind you!" Dante spun, catching Romano's wrist mid-strike. With a savage twist, he drove the blade back, burying it in Romano's chest. The rival boss staggered, disbelief etched on his face before crumpling to the ground. Silence fell. The battle was over. Dante stood, chest heaving, blood staining his shirt. His gaze found Sophia, and for a long moment nothing else existed. He crossed the distance in 3 strides, cupping her face with hands still trembling from the fight. "You saved me," he whispered. Her eyes shone with tears, relief and love pouring through every word. "No. We saved each other." Dante pulled her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was fierce, unrelenting, a promise sealed under the watching stars. For the first time, Sophia didn't feel like a girl caught in his world. She felt like his equal, his partner, his fire, and together they had survived the storm. The café smelled of coffee beans and warm pastries, sunlight streaming through the wide windows in golden sheets. The bell above the door chimed, and Sophia glanced up from behind the counter. For a moment, her chest tightened, half expecting danger, half expecting shadows to follow her forever. But instead, it was Mrs. Rivera from down the block, smiling as she shuffled in for her usual tea. The world had settled again, or at least it pretended to. Sophia wiped her hands on her apron, her gaze drifting to the corner table. He was there, as he had been almost every morning now. Dante Moretti. The man who once commanded fear with a glance now sat quietly, a cup of black coffee in front of him, his suit jacket hanging on the chair. His presence still filled the room, still turned heads, but the sharp edges seemed softer here. When his eyes found hers, Sophia's breath caught. He gave a small smile, private just for her, and in that moment the whole café faded away. She crossed the room, setting a fresh croissant on his table. "On the house," she said. His brow arched. "I thought you ran a business, not a charity." "Consider it a thank you," she replied, "for saving you." His tone was teasing, but his gaze was steady. Sophia shook her head. "For not letting me go." Dante's smile deepened, a rare softness curving his lips. He reached for her hand, his fingers threading with hers, his voice dropping low so only she could hear. You're not mine because I claimed you that night. You're mine because you chose to stay. Her chest ached with warmth. And you're mine because you didn't make me run. Silence stretched between them, comfortable now, like the pause in a song before the final note. For the first time in weeks, Sophia felt something she hadn't dared believe possible. Peace. Later, they walked together down the city street, the evening glow painting the skyline in shades of rose and amber. Dante's hand never left hers, his thumb tracing slow circles across her skin, as if to remind them both this was real. You know, Sophia said, her voice playful but edged with truth, I never wanted a life like this. I liked simple, predictable. And now? He asked. She glanced at him, at the man who had terrified her, claimed her, protected her, and bared his soul in pieces she never thought he could. Now I realize simple was never what I needed. I needed you. For once, Dante didn't argue. He stopped on the corner, pulling her close, his forehead resting against hers as the city hummed around them. Then you'll have me. Always. Sophia smiled through the ache in her chest, through the scars of fear that still lingered. She believed him. Because love this fierce, this hard-won, wasn't fragile. It was fire. And it was theirs. Together they stepped into the glow of the evening, hand in hand, leaving behind fear and betrayal, walking toward a future neither of them had expected, but both had chosen. Do you believe love can truly bloom in the most dangerous places and still lead to peace? Share your thoughts in the comments.